that are making headlines this morning. The biggest has to do with Raila Odinga and Musalia Mudavadi's tour of Mount Kenya and the promises they are making. And before the break, I did pose this question to one of our panelists, Simba Guled, who's a governance expert. I'd like to know, in your opinion, all these things that are being offered to the people of Mount Kenya, are they resonating actually with the needs of the people, assuming that the people will actually vote in line with what they want out of a leader? We have Musalia Mudavadi talking about the economy and all that. When you listen to some of the things that are being said, do you think they're actually hitting the nail on the head when it comes to what the people of Mount Kenya need? And what about the rest of the country? Why all this focus on central Kenya?
Yes, I think when I hear Raila Odinga talking about, meaning good for people of central Kenya, it looks like, again, going to Canaan. So, it's a repeat of the Canaan story.
Yes.
And I think people have moved from references to religious edicts that do not really mean anything in terms of the challenges they face on a daily basis. People of Mount Kenya have challenges with prices of milk, price of tea, price of coffee. The people down there on the lower scale of the economy are really struggling. So what they really want to hear, and I think that's where Deputy President is way ahead, is when he talks of bottom-up. It seems to be resonating with the people more easily than when you talk about a very abstract, terminologies that don't really, cannot easily be interpreted by the ordinary people. Secondly, I think the Right Honorable Raila Odinga is still stuck in the past, if I'm honest on this. We know people of my generation and above can still recall what he did for this country, the second liberation, etc. But remember, in 2022, we will have totally new, additional, almost 6 million voters who have gotten their who are registered as voters in the last 2-3 years, or who have attained the age of 18 in the last couple of years, and who have no recollection of what happened in 1991-92, who certainly cannot appreciate, So the issue of saying that, the enigma and the charisma that people like Raila Odinga have do no longer have any impact on the young voters. What they want to hear is, how do we get jobs? How do we get food on our table? That's where he needs to now concentrate. Certainly, waiting for support from the government may not be the best way to go about it. Secondly, Raila Odinga has always been the type who used to bring coalitions together, Kalonzo, Mudavadi, Wetangula. But there has been also some mistrust along the way. Since the last NASA coalition, you have seen there was that argument around the political parties' money and etc. So when you hear people like Kalonzo saying we no longer trust Raila Odinga, it's a big issue, I think, that is there. And therefore, right now, maybe they might also not go very far on their own, but they will hold him at ransom to demand, make earlier demands. They can even ask for funds upfront to be put on the table. Billions of shillings may be demanded along the way, which even Raila Odinga himself may not have. So this is a very challenging time for him, I think. It's not easy because his voting basket has always been a coalition of, leaders. We have also seen the coastal region moving slowly away from the core ODM, thinking. We are seeing the rest of the country, people moving forward. Smaller parties are coming up all over. I mean, every leader that I know today is registering his own party. So we may not have really this big coalition that people think. At least I know Deputy President has been very consistent in saying he is not ready for any coalition. I don't know whether that will help him in the long run, but at least it has shown some semblance of stability in terms of his way forward.
And clarity.
And more clarity. So I think what Raila Odinga should do is go back to his traditional way of doing politics, move up and, not only concentrate in Central. Central is just one region in Kenya. But Kenya is much wider. We have more than 20 million voters across this country. And the sooner he puts his infrastructure in place, put his committees in place and start moving, the better for him.
Yeah. Now, there's something you said that has reminded me of this quote in today's paper by Javas Bigambo, political analyst, who says the three politicians, that is Raila, Kalonzo and Musalia Mudavadi, are working very hard towards political oblivion. They are using the same old tactics, the same path without new ideas, no strategy to charm new voters. This is one of the political analysts that have been sampled here. Honorable Mwaniki, what do you say about that analysis? Is it accurate in your view?
Well, you must appreciate that the three of them, first of all, Kalonzo and Musalia can't go far without Raila. That's a fact. They're just trying, like what Gulai is saying, to up their price. They'll force Raila to the table to negotiate. And Raila without Kalonzo and Musalia can also not go very far. Now, speaking about the appeal to the voters currently, indeed, out of the 20 million voters, we are talking about 30% strong, going to 40, who are actually youth. And I pity the political class that are aiming to go to the State House. None of them has been able to come up with a model that is convincing to hold on to the youth vote. And you see, we assume that the young people don't have a mind of their own, they can't make their decision. Let me tell you, the world is happening. We have seen very young leaders getting elected into presidency, as late as Zambia one, who is 59 years old. And I'm telling you, if you miscalculate how to win the youth on your side, I don't see how you'll win the presidency. Now, but there's something I want to underline here. Let's not write off Raila yet. He may be looking old, he may be looking like he's tired, but he's one guy who, at least having tried to win the presidency for a couple of times, has the networks, has the infrastructure, has the people who, when he activates, and I think we must also appreciate that within the current corona, environment we are living in, it is not easy to have those, crowds gathering for political talk. That is why you find that the now podium that the politics is moving to in this country is the churches. And it's a pity that the places of worship has now been converted to campaign platforms. And I wonder how you're able to manage, throwing barbs at your competitor in front of a pulpit. I think the clergy, the religious community needs to wake up and ask themselves, do they want to be politicians or do they want to convert the places of worship to remain as places of worship? So that then the hope that the Kenyan people have always found refuge in places of worship is not lost. But I think in terms of whether Raila, whether Musalia or Kalonzo will have an impact, I don't think so. Coalitions will be formed. And there's no single candidate who will make it to State House 50+1 without coalitions. Pre-election coalitions and post-election coalitions. And I keep repeating this, that once the Mount Kenya small parties organize themselves, then you'll find that they'll start now attracting coalitions. And even DP, I wouldn't be surprised, at the right time he'll lead and say, okay, fine, the look of things, I've now opened to coalitions. But initially he has to dig in so that he has more numbers on the UDA side, so that even as he goes to the table for a coalition, he has the stick on the longer side, telling the other small parties, I have these numbers, what numbers do you have? Therefore, you can't come on a 50-50 basis. You only probably have 5%, 10%, then he keeps the 80%. And that's political acumen, that is his strategy. And I think when you look at 2017, the Jubilee nomination fiasco, that is why you find that nobody is willing to join one single large party. Because once you are locked out, then your political door is shut. So you'll have as many small parties as the candidates will want to be there. Look at Moses Kuria, for example. When he ran into trouble with the People Party, he went and formed a different party almost immediately. And he's in fact, you can't have the same Kuria who has sponsored a candidate in Juja. He's now in Meru trying to sponsor another candidate using a different party. And you must say that Moses is a bright chap, after all. He's able to move into a house, organize it, emerge, run with the wind. So we are going to see more and more of this. I would have been, if I was Musalia or Kalonzo, I would have been looking for Moses Kuria, for example, and the other likes of Moses Kuria, telling them, look, let's form a coalition as now, so that then you can force Baba to listen to you. But as it were, right now, Raila is still ahead of the two of them, and I mean the three of them, and I predicted, and I still predict that the win or the competition will be between William Ruto and Raila Odinga.
Mr. Guled has mentioned something that I find quite curious because it's also being covered here. Critics raise concern over Joho's 1 month absence from the public eye. Now, here, this article, well, according to his official sources, he was away on a trip abroad. But of course, there's a lot of speculation about his political strategy for the future. In politics, people strategize and do not talk all the time. The governor is back from his overseas trip, is what his people said, and he is very much active in the current political discussions. Traditionally, when you think of Raila Odinga, Joho wouldn't be even at a rally and what have you. Joho wouldn't be far away. But then there's talk of him moving aside and even trying to, or rather planning to, vie against his, of course, Raila Odinga, ODM boss. What do you make of this, Mr. Kioko, and what are his political prospects looking at 2022?
I think the Coast region needs to be seen from a broader perspective, other than Mombasa.
Okay.
Remember in the Msambweni by-election...
Even in this era of kingpins?
Even in the era of kingpins. Let me explain this a little bit. You remember the Msambweni by-election, the first one, and Joho tried to impose his will and say, this is our battle, we are going to win it. Baba, you should not come to Coast. But the dynamics in Msambweni were that the local communities wanted to assert themselves over lordship from Mombasa-ship. Today, you also need to look at what Governor Kingi is doing. And these are very profound issues because it revolves around the Mijikenda political organization and the proudness of the Giriama people, who are the largest number, the kings, who are the Digos, and the elite, who are landed at the Durumas. How do those agree to be politically organized by people from Mombasa, who are called Waswahili? Right. That too is the conversation that is going on in Coast. And when ODM removed Kingi, that's a bigger story, because Kingi is going to form his party, where he will take his Giriama votes and the Mijikenda votes become a critical question in the analysis going forward, similar to what is happening in Central when you talk about Moses Kuria and the likes. So maybe Joe is also feeling internal hits within ODM, given that the traditional bedrock support that has propelled him is not the Waswahili only. It is the coalition around the Giriamas, the Durumas, the Digos, agreeing that this Mswahili guy needs to lead us.
Right.
If they pull away, then Mombasa as a county is exposed, because these guys from outside will come and influence the politics of the day. But be that as it may, look at the ODM nomination again. It was closed. The deadline for submission was closed. Only Oparanya and Joho had put in their submissions. Today, you are hearing Jimmy Wanjigi say he's going to contest this thing. Baba has not returned this paper. So the fluidity in the politics that are going on is such that if you are Joho, you want to take a pause and rethink about your political future. Joe is a young man, is not yet 47. He's a young man. So him is looking at post-governorship of Mombasa. Which direction are we heading? The level of dissatisfaction, economic dissatisfaction in Mombasa today on account of SGR, on account of certain policies that have been taken by Jubilee government that have hurt the local young people at the ground, also do bother him. This story that came out last week or something about the getting the internal container freight service here in Nairobi to his family. So there are so many things that are going on, but by and large, I would imagine that for Governor Joe, he is looking at his future, and his future with a possibility of not working with Raila, with a possibility of working with any other person, provided he's guaranteed a seat in the political discussions going forward. If you allow me to digress a little bit at this conversation of ODM and the Raila Kalonzo, I think the rest is not about who comes number two. I think that's what people need to understand. What Kalonzo Mudavadi are doing and Raila is not a conversation of who comes number two, because number two doesn't matter in politics.
Yeah.
So Raila without Kalonzo is as weak as Kalonzo Mudavadi without Raila. So these people are tied by the hip. They'll either sink together or they rise together.
Okay.
But the problem has been that the candidature of Raila Odinga in Central Province somehow elicits negative conversation. Acceptability levels are still low in Central Province. Majority of people who are pro-Ruto are pushing a Raila's contest with Ruto, because it means you're going to the traditional areas and whipping up traditional emotions so that ni Raila. You understand? But if the NASA brigade was to reorganize themselves and present band together and present a neutral person or a fresh face into this conversation, with Raila still being in the fall, then there's a huge possibility that people in Central Province may take a pause and listen.
Who would that neutral...
between Kalonzo and Mudavadi, they should be able to, and I like what Mudavadi is currently doing. On his own account, he's frequently engaging Central Province.
Yes.
Remember in 2013, Mudavadi was for about a week or so before the Madimoni statement came out, Uhuru preferred Musalia over anything else. So you can see what Mudavadi is doing right now is re-endearing himself, so that if they, and for sure the Raila's candidature in Central Province is causing jittery, then NASA needs to bring in a fresh face that comes to the fore and is able to be listened to by Central Province. That is the sense. That is the only thing Raila can deliver to NASA people so that they win. Otherwise, when it is all that, then it's a race on who is a strong number two. Then we're talking about post-elections, MOU. And you know, post-election MOUs will come with their own dynamic. Why do you want to negotiate with number two, who has 33%, yet number one had 42%? We only need to up ours and he wins. So nobody should try to negate their values at this particular point. Stick together, get a neutral face, be it Mudavadi, be it Kalonzo. Raila must accept to pull back a little bit, then people move forward. Otherwise, we are all there, number two, number three, and it doesn't matter.
Oh, okay. Now let's go back to the Joho issue. On page 6, the article title is "Critics Raise Concern Over Joho's 1-month absence from the public eye." Now here's a quote from Yusuf Abubakar, who is a political analyst and a Mombasa lawyer. He says that Joho's plan was to battle it out with Raila Odinga, and he feels like this could work against him. He says his stance that he must face Raila in the nomination appears to have created some friction between him and the other ODM leader. Raila's word in other parts of the country is never challenged. Now, Professor Omenya, sorry, we seem to have forgotten about you. I wish you would have, shouted or something, but sorry about that. What do you make of Joho's disappearance, his political prospects? Could you come in on this and tell us, could he even survive an attempt against Raila Odinga politically?
Thanks. I think it's Kenyan politics, you just get pushed aside without any warning. And you're out of the issue. But anyway, thanks. I think Joho's issue is very interesting, and has been highlighted there, is linked with coastal politics. If I were Raila, I would be more worried about the coast than central Kenya. I personally don't really read much into Joho's absence. We know really that Joho has been made by ODM, and while he's also made some significant contributions to ODM, and has been highlighted really. Joho would get very far without the Mijikendas at the coast there. I would actually look at this more within the broader coastal politics. Coast is very unique. We know, for example, that for Raila, Kingi's Kilifi was delivered better votes and better seats per capita than Raila's own Bondo or Siaya. It was only in Kilifi where literally everybody from the MCA to governor to to women rep and so on, were actually in ODM. The other thing that I think is very interesting and linked with Joe, and I don't think people are reading a lot of this into the coastal politics, but I think is very, very important. Coast has some of the youngest leaders in the whole country. If you look at the governors and the so-called kingpins of the coast, those guys, in fact, the oldest of them is Mvurya, and Mvurya is only 51 years old. Joho is 45. Kingi should be about 47, 48 there. Granton Samboja also just getting into 50s. So those guys, the entire coastal leadership is a very young leadership, extremely young leadership, both in parliament and at county level in terms of governors. And this is very, very interesting because these guys still have a long political shelf life. They're not like the Kalonzos of this world and the Davadis and the Railas and so on. And it makes sense that they start looking beyond Raila. Because I mean it's very, very clear, like I've said, that while ODM contributed to propping up some of these leaders, particularly Johan Kingi, they also helped ODM a lot, big time. In fact, they were the strongest loyalists of ODM. And Raila must start thinking quite carefully about the coast. That, I mean, if his strongest loyalists in the country are bulging, they're actually leaving the ship, that there'll be a lot to lose in that particular regard. And I wasn't particularly pleased politically with the way the ODM leader Raila handled Kingi's issue, with a wave of a hand that is fine. I mean, let him pursue his political ambitions, and you see also the same sort of casualness even with this Joho issue. Yes, I think Raila need to think quite carefully about the coast and how he handles these young leaders. If these young leaders don't see a future in ODM and see a future of having a meaningful stand at the leadership of this country, they're going to go, and it will be very, very difficult to create another ground movement at the coast as ODM has actually done before. Raila does not have the energy anymore. There are no convictions. We know very, very well that whatever Raila has been speaking about lately from BBI and economic issues and so on, he has no traction with the Mwananchi. And we know how to have traction with the Mwananchi. The only way to have traction with the Mwananchi is to spend time with the Mwananchi. And in fact, the coastal leaders have done that very well over the years. And if ODM loses this particular region, I think for me, Raila's presidency will just be dead. But in terms of Joho's positions, I'll do the same. If I was in my mid-40s, I'm coming to my second term as a governor, I would definitely sit down and think long-term in terms of the stakes for me politically within the country, about my own future, especially politicians remain politicians, and then start thinking about the possible vehicles and the possible bargaining chips. And currently, of course, there's no bargaining chip that somebody like Joho would have inside of the ODM. But he remains within ODM, his deputy party leader. But having said that, I'm not surprised at all that he would take a step back from day-to-day ODM issues and start think about his own future. Yeah, because without doing that, it would be irresponsible of him anyway politically. And in fact, he has a lot more issues to deal with, because I mean, as Kingi sets up his party, Kingi might just run away with the entire coast. You never really know. Yeah, so it's critical that Joho is involved in those conversations. Yeah, thank you. Back to you.
Indeed, especially given those dynamics that Mr. Kioko pointed out earlier on, that basically, unfortunately, brings us down back to tribal issues. Now, that concludes Press Review, but there's so much more that happened over the weekend that I'd like us to dig into. And of course, the biggest has to do with Deputy President William Ruto's security drama that has now headed to Parliament. Now, of course, we heard that story earlier on by Alan Ochanda, whereby the Deputy President said it's okay. You can even give him G4S security guards. He is fine with that. Mr. Mwaniki, I'd like you to take on this one and tell us what you think about how this has played out, both in the public eye and given what the Deputy President has said. He's downplayed it. Some assert that this is actually making him even more popular.
Well, you agree with what the DP has said, because personally I don't see any big deal about what happened around his security, because truth be told, William Ruto has advanced himself, has projected himself as a hustler. And in fact, the decision by IG and his team to remove the security around, or reorganize it, let me call it that way, propelled William further, or confirmed further, that he's a hustler. And that's why he comes up and says, look, well, even G4S are security enough. What is this big deal about it? And that in itself, in fact, if the parliamentary committee should actually just cancel the agenda, there's nothing to discuss. In any case, William Ruto does not require to be moved around by government security. He is already himself surrounded by so many of his fans and his supporters who sort of guarantees him what he needs in terms of security of moving around. Obviously, there is the constitutional requirement, being the Deputy President of the Republic, to have provided with the VIP protection. And that, the IG confirmed, is still there. So I really think that instead of distraction from focusing on providing vaccine to COVID vaccine to people, encouraging people to go out in large numbers and get vaccinated so that we can reopen the economy fully, instead of getting distracted in terms of formations that are going on in the political arena, I feel this issue of security is just a detour, to try and throw something up there to keep us busy going. I don't need much about it, honestly, I don't.
Joseph Kioko, what do you think is happening here? It's quite curious. The timing came after the Deputy President was asked by his boss to resign if he was not satisfied with the government that he is serving. And of course, we do know political implication for such things. They might do the opposite. They might make him more popular. And we're not dealing with people who are ignorant about these dynamics. So what do you think this is all about?
You know, the conversation about political resignations and the history of how political events are followed during the resignations. There's this letter of Jaramogi who resigned in 1968, 69?
Yes.
And people tout it and say that is the honorable thing to do. But you need to interrogate the life after that in terms of political success. Toto Phelps, he never made a comeback until 2002. Until 1992, never became president. So yes, resignation on paper looks good, but in terms of political reality, it has such implication. Even at the height of mistreatment in the Nusumkate Serikali, or after the referendum of 2005, Ndizi, bananas and oranges, the Orange Brigade did not resign after winning that election. They moved out. They were sacked by Kibaki, and there were consequences. When Martha Karua and Mungatana resigned, in government, we know their story and the consequences that follow them until today. So when people tell the DP resign, there's again a lot of fallacy about it. We're not being real in this conversation. We know that he was elected, he was not appointed. He has not failed to execute the mandate that has been given by the president. The president is basically lamenting. Then on top of that, they goof and they attempt to withdraw security. Net effect is that you're just giving this gentleman a lot of sympathy.
But you and I know this. So I'm assuming whoever is doing this should surely know that that would be an effect.
But it also goes back to that question of there are so many obvious mistakes that are being done that it begs the question, is Uhuru not campaigning for Ruto? Because these mistakes are too many. Maybe the first one would have said it's a slip of the tongue. But the second one, it looks by design and default that this administration, in all its pronouncements, in all its action,
so in what seems like hostility might actually be designed to favor the...
It's a game plan because it's not that serious. Why would you touch if an assistant minister has security at home? if the GSUs are the one, not GSUs really, the APs and the SBS people are the one guarding ministers' houses.
Yes.
Which is a standard thing. And ministers here are appointed, they're not politicians. They were picked from their homes. This guy is elected by 6 million, 7 million Kenyans.
Right.
He has enemies there. The people who vote, there are people who consider him not fit to sit there. So his level of threat are so high that he's accorded the best security in this country.
Right.
When you move to push him out, when you move to dissociate himself from government project, yet these government projects are a failure in totality, you're basically branding him as a Mr. Clean.
Right.
Then the question that comes to fore is, for sure, are you not campaigning for him? And that is why you and I and those people of goodwill are asking these questions and are saying, hey, guys, hold a minute. Let's just let's do an analysis now. Let us do a cost-benefit thing of this relationship between Raila and Uhuru and try to extract that which is good. If until today we've not seen anything that is good, it is just mere promises, mere lamentation, or as a president, you are not supporting my programs, then we ask the question, which program have you initiated that the DP route has come out to say flatly no?
Okay.
Yes, the BBI was a political project. Even when he gave his statements at Bomas, it still went on. You know, so these all shenanigans that are happening, it is very easy to conclude that the system or people within government are hell-bent on making sure that